Yes, the second part, application. The first part was to try to give you some general introduction in applied ethics in questions and challenges talking about or analyzing ethics in the field of applied sciences. And my question, what do you remember? What we discussed, or what was the content of our first session? Remember any issue?
And so we discussed this, we call it trolley problem. So with should the autonomous car go? So it will die. We also discussed different examples for ethical base rules, that's like the golden rule or Kant's.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you. Any other? Okay. Nothing else? What was our initial thesis? It was the example of Kant, because Kant is so important for the European understanding of some basic principles in the deontological, ethical argumentation strategy. Do you remember an alternative strategy of argumentations in reasoning in applied ethics and ethics? This is also important for our discussions in the second session today. We talked about deontological perspectives or strategies. And what was the counterpart?
This calculus way?
Indeed. It's a so-called consequentialistic approach. And the consequentialistic approach implies that the rule how to act ethically depends on the outcome of my action or decision. And the conflict between these two, or what I'm saying is too simple, but to give you some idea. In all these cases in applied ethics, this was my thesis, you will be confronted with the conflict between the ontological approach, and I mentioned different kinds of deontological strategies, and the consequentialistic approach. So the question, should we accept or implement a new technology in an ethically acceptable manner, will be discussed between these two perspectives. Maybe a third perspective or fourth perspective, virtue ethics, for example, or the contract theory, which is also very important in all these discussions. And these are only examples. What else? What do you remember? Challenges in applied ethics. Unsolved problems. We need discussions about the ethics of responsibility. And I think also talking about innovations nowadays, the problem of many hands. Who is at the end responsible? Yes, we have a system and we have some scheme how to analyze it. But we have also some examples which are not clear, especially not only in a legal sense, but in a moral sense or by ethics. What was the second problem or challenge? Ethics of risks. Why is ethics of risk so important to discuss it in the field of innovation and applied sciences? Why? Because the meal together was perfect. Maybe this is the reason. Why is it so important to discuss it? What do you think? Life is a risk, okay. But, yeah, please.
Yes, AI is a new member in our society. It acts and it will influence everyone.
Indeed, everyone. And this includes some risks, some different risks. Technical risks, indeed, but not only technical risks, these technical risks includes also sometimes, not all risk has some ethical implication, but sometimes also ethical implications.
The amount of risk of possible damage rises with high-risk technologies like nuclear technologies or other technologies, and the range increases. So
Indeed.
more persons when something happens that shouldn't. And both aspects are very important for the calculation of risk management.
Yeah, indeed. And this is typical for modern technologies. Okay, I think these are the most important topics and items we will discuss in the field of applied sciences by both examples we will discuss. But firstly, I want to remember the initial thesis, because I think this initial thesis and the confrontation with new technologies in form of moral machines will give us a framework for our discussion at the end. Please remember also for our discussions at the end of the lecture today, the second lecture, both theses, the capacity of autonomous moral decision making is what distinguishes humans from all other beings, and the question, and this is a conflict, a confrontation, moral agents by AI algorithms, in the sense of, and this is a very strong interpretation, but it's discussed, autonomous moral decision making. Okay, I think the last topic and issue I want to remember is that in my sense, in my personal and in my scientific community common sense, is the understanding of ethics as a critical reflection about moral decisions, values, principles, a critical reflection, and that it's not enough only to give some moral judgment, you have to give a reason. It's a kind of justification we need. We talked about dignity and autonomy, and we will talk again about these two very important values or principles, not only because these principles are the background of our political constitution, but it's also important for guidelines developed by the European Union and the Ethics Commission for Autonomous Driving 2017 at TUM and in Germany later on. Okay, we talked about responsibility, risk, and so on. And this is not only an academic discourse. The VDI, the Association of Engineers in Germany, published two ethical guidelines. This is the earlier one of Hans Lenk. And I think as an engineer, you have to recognize these four sentences. Engineers recognize natural sciences and engineering as important powers shaping society and human life today and tomorrow. Therefore, engineers are aware of their specific responsibility. They orient their professional actions towards fundamentals and criteria of ethics and implement them into practice. Wow. And the last one, I think it's also very interesting. And the new paper, or you can't find the last sentence in the new paper of the VDI, engineers are committed to enhancing critical reflection on technology within schools, universities, or wonder, enterprises and professional institutions. Come on. It's your job. Okay, back to the...
But we have also ethical guidelines by the DFG, and I think also for universities and for a lot of other researchers, so from medicine, etc.
Yeah.
And did you ever compare these ethical guidelines?
No. I didn't compare them, but I discussed EU papers of EU guidelines of the implementation of AI from 2001 and 2. Okay, again, it's the framework. We were talking, and my idea is to talk about what does it mean to be an autonomous moral agent person. And here are the two examples. First example, AI in medicine, and second example, AI in moral machines, level 5. And I'm very happy that we have here this room today, experts in gender, experts in autonomous driving, and so on. And hopefully some comments, please. Okay, the first one, AI in medicine. And the background of this discussion now, of this analysis, are two new papers. Paper published 2025, both papers. The first paper, or one paper, I think it's a great paper to give an overview and some guideline for AI in medicine, ethical and biased consideration in artificial intelligence by machine learning. It's a very, very good paper. The second one is a special exploration research paper about a special kind of problem using AI in medicine, bias. And also this example of bias in AI and medicine has some special direction. It's a special case in bias in the case of health care. And here is the title, AI took risk downplaying women's health needs in social care. And this is an empirical research paper. And the conclusion of the main researcher of this paper is, if social workers are relying on biases, AI-generated summaries that systematically downplay women's health needs, they may assess otherwise identical cases differently based on gender rather than on actual need. This is a special perspective, but I think it's important to focus on special questions. And also in this overview, they identified different kinds of biases. And it's important. Bias is not only a problem of AI. Bias also happens in traditional methods of medicine. But I think 4 kinds of bias are important for, or special, using AI in medicine. Okay, every know it, problem of data bias. And what does it mean, or what is the outcome? Problems in the diagnostic data sets. Also often mentioned algorithm bias. So it has also a lot of skewed prioritizations of systems and conditions in diagnostic algorithms. Or representation bias, underrepresenting of a minority of people. And the confirmation bias, also a great problem using AI. Okay, this is one, I think, one very important, or these are a lot of very, very important insights. But the question is, which kind of ethical guardrails or ethical barriers do we need, and which one? And also in this paper, they gave some ideas what are the ethical implications of such bias. The problem of autonomy. We talked also in the morning about autonomy. And AI developers in this direction and users ensures that individuals have to have sufficient control over the interactions with AI, how to implement it. Or what about beneficence? Beneficence, looking at the special field of bias. So there is a demand, AI developers and users are responsible for maximizing human benefits. But how to solve this problem? Justice. We talked not about justice before, or we talked about distributional justice, looking at risks. But this is also a very social and moral and ethical implication, the principle of fairness. Or the last one, accountability. AI developers and users are accountable for ensuring that AI is designed and implemented ethically, transparently, and reliably. I would say this is a great challenge for the development of AI software, especially transparency and the ethical implications. What are the consequences? What do you think? Or what could be the consequences? How should AI developer or the implementation of AI software in medicine should avoid these bias? Any ideas? Be open-minded. What ideas do you have? How could we manage it? No idea? It was only your arm, okay. But maybe your arm had to tell us something? No, nothing?
I guess just try and test and
Test.
all the possible biases that we know about or that like somebody could think of, and then really basically then.
Okay, yeah.
Penetration testing.
Testing is indeed a very good direction of solution or managing other aspects.
Get people who are trained in ethical questions involved. So don't just use informatics people, but also get other people around who know about the stuff and can pinpoint problems that exist.
Yeah, indeed. Also very important implication. Ich glaube, Eva, du hattest die auch. I don't know who was first.
As you said, mentioned the interdisciplinary approach.
Yeah.
And one point should be, it's very important, it's the documentation of what you're doing. And another approach, I would say, is to avoid thinking, according to Stuart Brand, that we are gods if we have a computer.
Yeah.
So reduce the approach, the general approach of AI tools or software tools, and start in a reduced scale and try out if this is within the range of the data correct, or does it work? If it doesn't work correct, and then you might carefully expand it. But as the example of Watson shows us, it didn't work because they had a general approach and the data didn't match the problem.
Yeah, indeed. I agree totally. Eva?
No, it was already mentioned. Multidisciplinary.
Yeah. Other ideas?
I have a similar concern.
Sure.
I mean, I have a similar concern. I've heard a joke before, like, someone to ask the doctor, like, should I take the medicine before or after the meal? And the doctor said, let me check the logo. It says.
Yeah.
So it's like when you say it means like the left and analyze more data.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether the doctor will just be less patient and less concerned about the individual's feelings and experience, but just to use the data to give.
Yeah, indeed. And better data, in this case, yes, it's a good idea, testing, but in this case, you are confronted with the problem of induction. In problem of induction, do you understand the problem? What's the problem of induction? I'm sorry for the simple question. Okay, you are an empirical researcher, and your goal is, the idea is in your research paper, the question, it's an famous example of Karl Popper, and you have to go, okay, research, and the research question is which color which color has swans? And you will visit every lake nearby, make a protocol, an empirical protocol. And at the end, you mentioned the summary, all swans are white. But what about the case in Australia or wherever? I don't remember, I've forgotten. Their swans are black. The problem is, and this is a statistics question at least, you can't give an all sentence in a sense of a law only by induction. Okay, this is a problem of induction. It was too simple, but Okay, great ideas. And here are some other ideas, or not other, or some general ideas. Developing an ethical acceptable AI software, data, testing, interdisciplinary approach, ethical experts. And I think you can headline it by the so-called precautionary principle. What's a precautionary principle? And we discussed it also in the morning with a colleague for an experiment. What's a precautionary principle? What does it mean morally or ethically?
Take the worst case into account.
For example, testing, risk assessment, ethical risk assessment, for example. Or in the field of implementation, one aspect, remember, problem of many hands, we have different stakeholders. Implementation, principle of subsidiarity. What's the principle of subsidiarity? Ever heard before? Never. There is the answer.
It's a social principle. It's also one of the three Christian principles.
Has a background. That's the background. But this is, I think the main meaning is shared responsibility. That every stakeholder who is involved in this process, beginning by developing, implementation, and so on, has its own kind of responsibility, different kinds of responsibility.
I think the key factor is the stakeholder and their claims and needs. Well, it's as the CSRD directive says from the European Union for sustainability assessment, you have to identify the stakeholders and the claims.
Yeah. And I think the third aspect, what competencies every stakeholder has. Yeah, and so in practice, in my personal view, some skeptical attitude, and I think also you mentioned it before, but competence-based habit of trust and distrust. And for this balancing, you need competencies, you need competent researchers, experts, and so on. And at the end, if we are talking about ethics and moral philosophy, it has to be human-centered. Okay, my second example. Autonomous driving, level 5. Autonomous moral decision-making. And if we are talking about autonomous driving and moral decision-making, we have to accept or look at, we had to look at on 3 different types of decision making, of human-machine interaction. The first one is the simplest. It's nothing to do with autonomous moral decision making. In the loop means only humans control the machine. Okay, that's a problem in some cases, but not in this discussion. The second one is also interesting, and maybe you remember the police car in Peking with the weapon on board is on the loop. Humans and or software program are able to control the machine. It's a hybrid autonomous moral decision making. And Wyoming, I think, is using this hybrid system. And what is interesting for our discussion today is the last one. And interesting in the sense of, okay, maybe it's the future, it's only the future, maybe, whatever. The question out of the loop. Only software program controls the machine. Humans cannot intervene, and this is the case of a fully autonomous machines, fully autonomous algorithms. So, what we are talking about, or discussing, or what I'm discussing, is the case that we are confronted with so-called AAMAs. And remember the examples in the morning, the 4 or 5 examples about autonomous driving and your personal moral decision making, how to act and react. These examples are examples of dilemmatic situations. And so one of the great challenges also in moral philosophy and ethics is how to manage dilemmatic situations. And the characteristic of the dilemmatist is whatever you will do at the end, there will be some negative moral outcome, please.
So how you define control?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, control could mean you're given certain threshold values.
Yeah.
Control
Yeah.
could mean I have no idea what this thing is doing, but I still control the switch off button.
Yeah.
And that's not
Okay, yeah, it's
any more control.
yeah, okay, that's a good question. In the hardliner of machine ethics, the goal is that the machine itself gives it control or has implemented the control for the action. This is Moore, 2006, that the machine itself will make autonomous moral decisions. And for Moore and other authors, this is the main goal of moral machines. Okay, do we need ethics? Yes, indeed. And especially, I think it's also a famous author in this field of autonomous driving, maybe known in your field, Patrick Lin. Ever heard his name? Yeah, indeed, he's is accepting, without looking at ethics, we are driving with one eye closed. The question is, again, the ultimate goal of machine ethics, we believe, is to create a machine that itself follows an ideal concept of principles or set of principles. An explicit ethical agent. The question is, could a bot be a real moral agent? And do we need some ethical guidelines or ethical barriers? For example, Lin, who's a famous author, and also Abney is a famous author, agree, yes, we need ethical crash rails. The next question is how to implement it. Okay, that's a challenge for engineers, but the question is which ones? What do you think? Which ethical crash lines do we need? And why? Killing cats and not humans, okay. You don't agree, I know. Or killing old white guys like me with glasses and not young women. Okay, I'm sorry, it's a provocation. Come on. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, bitte, ja.
I think it's not so easy because the system have to calculate with possibilities.
Yeah.
That means with a possibility of some percentage,
Yeah.
there is a situation like whatever.
Yeah.
So they now can calculate some different options with a possible output of anything.
Yeah.
I think a machine cannot decide.
Uh-huh.
It's an algorithm. It gives an output, but this is not a decision.
Okay, but what, I agree, but what is about the situation, level 5?
You have a controller that has to control the traffic.
Okay, this would be a level 4.
He's irresponsible.
Okay, this is tricky. Okay, this is tricky. But again, do you have any ideas of which kind of red lines or ethical barriers should be never overridden?
It should never self-injure the driver. It should never. It's up intentionally.
Okay.
It's kind of hard, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
So it's because it's hard enough for a person to make ethical decisions.
Uh-huh.
I mean, unless you are in the situation.
Yeah.
To be able to translate it into an algorithm, to be able to make this decision is even harder.
Yeah.
And it's also subjective.
Uh-huh. It's also a very interesting, important aspect. We will discuss it by the Ethics Commission, the German Ethics Commission, later on. Any other ideas? No ideas? Would you drive with would you as a person, as an individual, would you drive with a autonomous driving car level 5? Yes or no?
I know it's problematic, but maybe the number of people, I'm not sure, but I mean, if I'm a driver, maybe at that moment, I would just lose my reason and let my emotion to decide.
Okay.
And exactly, maybe in addition to your point, I was just in Arizona where they have the autonomous taxi driving just in the central strip. And I always thought, crazy, I would never do it. But it felt so normal. Once you kind of realize that they're at every corner and people like to use them as a taxi because there is no other public transport, it seems so normal. So it's exactly what you said. It's a matter of seeing it, how it fits into place. And then you don't start thinking critically about all the things that you thought of before.
Okay, and shit happens. Yeah, this is life.
That's life.
It's risk.
Maybe you can bring me an answer to my question. So this idea of a fully autonomous moral machine. For me, it's utopia because at the end it would mean to reduce all humans to machines.
Indeed,
We have no one with a human being and to control.
Indeed. And this indeed.
This is an ideal and utopia, and it's not realistic.
But they are working on this case. I agree. But I'm sorry.
This brings us back to the fundamental basic idea of AI and artificial neural networks. That's for the same approach. To model human thinking and
indeed
is human thinking.
Indeed.
Think of Simon. Simon.
Indeed. It's utopia, it's future, and hopefully it don't happen.
Acceptability is the main issue for this. People think this is acceptable for us, and we can accept the risk and the negative output.
Yes, and this is a question of ethical risk assessment. and the question about, are there any ethical values, principles necessary to not accept a risk? This is the question in the background.
We have to distinguish between risk and danger.
There's a difference. What is the definition of a risk? It's a probability in the relation of a negative outcome.
Danger means you cannot.
Indeed.
The probability. And if you cannot calculate the probability of a car crash with an autonomous car driving cars, like some Tesla videos.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
This is not a risk, this is a danger.
Indeed. And so the question is at the end, should we accept this kind of innovation? And if it's a danger, it has also some legal background. And this is the difference. Okay, which one? And I think it's interesting looking at some EU and general political motivated guidelines in ethics. And I mentioned it before, the report of the Ethics Commission 2017. I will discuss 2 items later on, and the EU guideline 2021. And what maybe is interesting for you, this is a guideline with some fundamental ethical principles and values that an AI-based system application must have in order to preserve and promote respect of human agency. And this includes, they explain it later on, autonomy and dignity. Privacy and personal data is clear, autonomous driving. Fairness, we didn't discuss fairness before. What does it mean? Transparency, accountability and oversight. This is a paper published 2021, Ethics by Design and Ethics of Use Approaches of Artificial Intelligence. But I'm sorry for all these questions. But what about the conflict between a consequentialistic approach and a deontological approach? Why is this a conflict? And here are some typical arguments used in the field of autonomous driving. The consequentialistic approach, or especially the utilitarian approach, mentioned once vehicles cause fewer accidents than humans, automated driving at level 4 or 5 should be morally acceptable and should be implemented. Often read. The ontological perspective, only humans and not machines can and must take responsibility. Humans must not be harmed or even killed by machines. It's a danger. So fully autonomous machines are ethically not acceptable. This is a conflict. Okay.
But what about if the distinction between utilitarianism and deontology is something misguided and not too pragmatical enough?
Maybe, but wait a minute. Okay. Yeah.
And also add to the previous point, wouldn't we, if we follow a deontological approach, actually take the responsibility, also like a shared responsibility as a society for all the deaths that occur because we didn't switch, for example, to the system that is actually more secure and safe for everybody else?
Okay, also interesting argumentation. Please remember later on, we'll discuss it. Maybe there is one participant in the audience who can read it for us. The topic 8 of the report. Is there anybody? Please. activation of the participants. Please, yeah. A little bit louder, please.
Gender dramatic decisions, such as the decision between one human life and another, depends on the actual specific situation, operating unpredictable behavior by parties affected. They can thus not be clearly standardized, nor can they be proven such that they are ethically unquestionable. Technological systems must be designed to avoid accident. However, they cannot be standardized with complex or intuitive assessment of the impacts of an accident in such a way that they can replace or anticipate the decision of a responsible driver with the moral capacity to make correct judgment. It is true that a human driver will be acting unlawfully if he killed a person from an emergency to save the lives of one or more other persons, but should they not necessarily be acting culpably.
Genau, culpably. Why is this topic item interesting for our question about the interrelation between a consequentialistic approach and the ontological approach? And remember, we are confronted with a dilemmata situation. Yeah, please.
Well, the first utilitarian perspective is just only promise. It's not a proof.
Yeah.
And traffic researchers, I think it was from Dortmund, found out that autonomous traffic doesn't work. Or the other way around, traffic only works because no one obeys the rules.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
For this report, the promise of autonomous driving, that's from the idea that all cars, all vehicles are perfectly maintained, perfect condition, all with the same communication level and system, standardized systems, updated. But this is not the reality. The reality is that the average age of German cars is between 10 and 11 years.
Yeah.
So you have no software version 3 point anything at any cars. You have a diverse technology seen on the road, and the promise will never be fulfilled from the technical.
This is a great technical challenge indeed. But I think also in this topic you find a very interesting ethical implication.
I mean, and utilitarian of course defend and so a little stronger and says, well, actually, I'm not just talking about some social measure, but I'm also, let's say, a rule utilitarian.
Yeah.
Or in a simple way, you know, cars are so important in Germany. If we do everything that in the large scale, some guy from the Technical University can give us numbers, then he basically do everything. And
Indeed.
very permissive attitude.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And actually, we don't want to break all the rules if we start up the cars. So if we just need some statistics to do something, then we could do everything.
Yeah, indeed. This is a very...
I wouldn't give up as a utilitarian so easily.
Yeah, okay.
I can be skeptical about cars.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. But again, my question, I'm sorry. There is some interesting ethical implication in this point. What do you think about the idea of my thesis that they mentioned a general limitation of ethics?
I think they were mentioning about that they cannot be they can thus not be clearly standardized, nor they can be programmed.
Indeed.
Ethically unquestionable.
Indeed, and such that they are ethically unquestionable. This is very interesting. because this confronted with a double dilemma, how to decide in a special situation, how to act, and if we are thinking we have the possibility solving this conflict by ethics. That's interesting and important to mention, I think. Maybe the 9th topic is also interesting for you. Please, I'm sorry. Can you read it for us?
In the event of unavoidable accident situations, any distinction based on personal features, age, gender, physical or mental constitution is strictly prohibited. It is also prohibited to offset victims against one another. General programming to reduce the number of personal injuries may be justifiable.
Yeah.
Those parties involved in the generation of mobility risks must not sacrifice non-involved parties.
Do you remember one principle I mentioned before at the beginning of the second session and also in the morning? And clear, it has also some political background of our constitution. Do you remember the demand to use a person only as an instrument? Do you remember the idea of dignity and autonomy? I think this item is a good explanation and illustration what it means to accept the principle and value of dignity and autonomy. And the idea and the concept of a person, to remember, formula of the end in itself. People are ends in themselves. This is an illustration, point 9, about this principle. And it's also, again and again, it has its fundament in our constitution. So they are not allowed to act, to give a guideline in a conflict with our constitution. Okay.
Yes, this I think about the concept of people, person, human being.
Ja, ich komme jetzt gerade drauf.
From a legal point of view, a legal person has not been the same as an individual human being.
Indeed, and this is the next step. I'm sorry. That's the next step. Okay, back to our commission. I think, hopefully it's a good interpretation. The answer is, in my view, in my interpretation, clear if we are talking about a report. There is a clear hierarchy between a deontological and consequentialistic approach. Acknowledgement of the fundamental ethical principles of dignity and autonomy, including the basic rights of life, and only secondarily the consequentialistic approach. And now the question will start, the discussion, what is a person and what's a human being, and so on. Again, a robot, could it be a real moral agent? We try to give some better understanding what's the meaning to be a moral agent. And one definition of Keith Abney is, requires the capacity of rational deliberation, therefore robots may well qualify. Again, this is a conflict. And the conflict is, what is a person in a moral sense? That was your question. What is a person? And can a robot be, a bot be a person? But I think we should start with the first question. The thesis of Kant should only be an illustration of in my view, about the challenge if we are confronted if we are developing an autonomous small machine algorithm. So in the sense of Immanuel Kant, only as an example, he gives also a definition what it means to be a human. A human in the sense of the capacity of autonomous small decision making is what distinguishes humans from all beings, other beings. And this is also an ontological definition and has also some anthropocentric perspective. This is also a critique against Kant. But again, what about artificial autonomous moral agents? Autonomous moral decision making by AI algorithms? And here's a try, in a sense of a summary, with 5 minutes left. What is a person in a moral sense? Accepting the premise of the autonomy of being a person, being capable of moral self-determination. This is important in the sense of Kant, that we are able to reflect and give us by ourselves a moral rule or some moral reflections. It follows, if we accept it, it's only a thesis. And I think we should discuss it. It follows that the autonomy of the person must be recognized on the basis of rational existence. This is one premise. We don't have to accept it. To assume responsibility for one's own personal decisions and actions is in existential situations. That means, I think the next sentence will describe it in a better way, to be constantly faced with new, unpredictable, morally changing situations and have to make decisions. And I think what is also very important, if we are talking about what is a person in a moral sense, or what is our understanding of a person, I think it's a better description. It follows that possibility of failure, the possibility of being guilty. For example, in dilemmatic situations. And this understanding of a person, yes, indeed, is a special interpretation. It's an interpretation by a concept of human existentiality. It's a typical philosophical interpretation of to be a person. And if we accept it, we don't have to accept it. We have to discuss it maybe, hopefully. What is the person in a moral sense? Again, the report of the Ethics Commission, genuine dilemmatic situations such as the decision between one human life and another can thus not be clearly standardized, nor can they be programmed that they are ethically unquestionable, nor replace or anticipate the decision of responsible driver with a moral capacity to make correct judgments.
The problem about the programming is much lower, because if you consider the behavior of persons, they become an object in the code, not a subject.
Indeed.
They're reduced to anything else. I can't explain, but they are not a person.
Indeed.
In the algorithm.
Indeed. But the question is deeper in this case. Could algorithm, a moral agent with an AI algorithm, be a person?
That would mean that if you would see a person, they would have rights.
Yeah, indeed, I agree. But this is the question. And this is the question in the background of the ultimate goal of machine ethics, to create an algorithm or a machine which itself gives the rules of moral decision making. This is only the thesis. If you follow this premise, then I think the consequence is, from an ethical perspective, only if you accept it, such decisions are not allowed to be standardized by means of preliminary decisions made by programs or programmers. And a potential external control, for example by AI algorithm, would involve a form of suppression of a person's autonomy. Also, this aspect we discussed or mentioned before. And this would include, if we decide to develop a fully more autonomous moral agent, would include, and this is not acceptable, submission of personhood to technical systems. So, question, can a bot be a full moral agent in the sense of a person? If you accept this argumentation, only if you accept it, no. Not only because an algorithm is not a person, but rather than a thing in the sense of a program code, object, and so on, but also because, and I think this is, especially in a philosophical sense, very interesting and important to discuss, being a person in the sense of existentiality, being in physical, cognitive, emotional, social subject, means constantly facing new and unpredictable, morally changing situations, having to make decisions, and being able to fail, being guilty in a moral sense. And I think the last part of the sentence is also important, interesting. It's an idea of Hannah Arendt, for example, and are capable for forgiving. Wow. Question, can and should we grant fully artificial autonomous moral machines decision-making authority in existential dilemmata situations? My answer, no. My personal thesis is machine ethics involves a demand. This is a very philosophical answer, I'm sorry. Involves a demand, the development of a profound consciousness in the sense of clarifying what it means to be a moral person, a human. Or, by more details, the original technically motivated question of the acceptance of an I-guided moral agent in the form of a fully artificial autonomous moral machine involves the challenge for every person and demand to clarify the self-image of what it means to be a moral person. Thank you.